Rohtagi oration, may I invite our chairpersons for this session. As a customary, this session is the chairpersons are usually president and ex-presidents. So may I invite the present president, Dr. S.K. Runta sir, our ex-president, Dr. Arvind Jaiswal sir, whose recommendation and whose who recommended that Dr. S.N. Jha sir should be invited as he has a lot of work. So Dr. Arvind Jaiswal sir, Dr. Milind Kumar, incoming president, Dr. K.S. Gupta, vice president, Dr. Sunil Kumar, dynamic secretary, Dr. Nagen Gupta, Dr. Ajay Kumar Sinha, Dr. Nilesh Mohan, who is editor BJO, and our scientific coordinator, Dr. B.S. Jha sir, to please join as chairperson and scientific coordinator. Now I'd like to share the
my attendance will
first, I would like to welcome Dr. S.N. Jha, who is one of the pioneer in the retina surgery in this part of the world, most probably India. One of the pioneer surgeons, and this is the first visual meeting of the boss as per the customary. We are all going visual, so no physical meeting this year. I think let the other chairperson to join, and to join, I request Babu Sahab Jha to coordinate the session and all.
So, on behalf of Jha sir, I would like to take this opportunity to invite the incoming president, Dr. Milind Kumar, to introduce our speaker to our audience. Dr. Milind sir, please.
Thank you, Vibhuti. Good morning to everyone. This is my proud privilege to present before the August gathering Dr. Jayan Rohtagi, Oration Awardee, Dr. S.N. Jha, sir. My association with Dr. Sasi Bhai goes back to year 1975 when he joined PMCH as a medical student and introduced by my elder brother. I feel fortunate that Sasi Bhai is here in person to bless as elder brother. The topic is Journey of Retinal Surgeon Bridging the Millennium. Dr. Sasinath Jha graduated from Patna Medical.
Voice is breaking.
Chandigarh as first year resident. He was awarded MD Ophthalmology by AIMS, New Delhi. He got his vitreoretina training in the same institute. In 1989, he started vitreoretina service at Sri Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi. At present, he heads the retina service, which is fully equipped center for vitreoretina. He is also academic coordinator of DNV program of the department. The department is only a few select centers in the country, which is recognized by National Board to impart FNP degree in vitreoretina. Next. He has pioneered for more than 1 decade hands-on course of intersegment surgeons in posterior segment imaging and laser photocoagulation. Under the umbrella of Sir Gangaram Hospital, he kick-started postgraduate training program in the neighboring country of Bhutan. He was examined to the first batch of postgraduates from that country. He has multiple publications in peer-reviewed journals in both basic sciences and ophthalmology. Dr. Jha has been invited by various state bodies and as faculty. In addition, he has presented papers in both national and international conferences. In collaboration with Seva Prakalp, an NGO based in Delhi, he has rendered his helping hand in community ophthalmology for more than 3 decades. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Milind. For any student, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to remember his teacher, a gentleman, Professor J.N. Rohatgi. Before I go through my presentation, I must like to thank the whole executive of the Bihar Ophthalmology Society, particularly Dr. Milind and Dr. Vibhuti, who has not let me get lost in this virtual world of presentation. Dr. Vibhuti was kind enough to respond immediately whenever I had any problem or any question. And of course, I cannot forget my friend Dr. Arvind Jaiswal, who has made sure that the Bihar Ophthalmology Society doesn't forget me, neither do I forget Bihar. Thank you, Arvind, for your gestures throughout my professional career. I am also thankful to younger daughter of Professor J.N. Rohatgi, Dr. Anuja Rohatgi, who has allowed me to have some of the insight of his personal life, which I will be sharing with you shortly. As is showing on the, we all know that Professor Rohatgi was a thorough gentleman and a squint surgeon of Eastern India and trained none other than the Keith Lyle, the books that we all read. As an undergraduate student, we had to only say, listen that Dr. Rohatgi does squint surgery. Squint surgery was quite a, say, Greek for us at that time, maybe still Greek for me at this stage also. He was ex-professor and head of Department of Ophthalmology and principal MS of PMCH. What else one can achieve in his professional career? And of course, president in 1970 and president of Eastern Zone. He was the founder editor of Bihar Journal of Ophthalmology and chairman ARC AIOS 1982-1984. He was given Lifetime Achievement Award by the AIOS in 2003 and has written a book on a very difficult topic like squint. I'm just sharing some of his personal photographs which I was allowed to share by his younger doctor, Dr. Anuja Rohatgi. He was blessed with two bright daughters, Dr. Anita Rohatgi and Dr. Anuja Rohatgi, who are now well settled in US. Incidentally, they were contemporary to me. Elder daughter was 1 year senior to me and younger was 2 years junior to me. He was, as his daughter remembers him, was a doting father and a doting husband. So now I move on to my topic of presentation, a journey of a retinal surgeon bridging the millennium. The idea of this presentation is that to let know the younger generation what our generation has gone through and what we can compare now and what it was there at that time. So now virtually everything is under the feet of a vitreoretinal surgeon with these two gadgets of a hood switch, the microscope and the vitreous machine. He has everything under his control, but it was not like that when we started our career in the retina. So this is how a OT looks like these days in any vitreoretinal setup in the country. All gadgets at his disposal. And with just click, he can move from one mode to the other. He doesn't have to even look this side or that side or ask his assistant. He keeps on moving from one side to the other and saves so much of time. But the path has been long. There's been multiple learning curves for us, and there would have been hiccups, feeling of helplessness many times. You do a good buckling surgery, and after 3 weeks, you find a PVR, and you just can't do anything about it at that time. And you have to do improvise in so many stages. For 1983, my journey started from Patna. I landed in PGI Chandigarh as a first-year resident. Here, the difference was quite stark. Excitement, apprehension, both at the same time, and I had a cultural shock. See, on the left side, you have your Patna market, on the right is the Sector 17 Chandigarh market. And the first brush with the retinal attachment surgery, I was exposed by Dr. Gangwar and Dr. S.P.S. Grewal. I also had the opportunity to see Arugas band, which most of you have not seen. This Arugas band thread, he used a polyamide strand, but what I had seen was a 10 silk, just tied around the globe to work like a band, which we now use as silicone. And even RD surgery was performed by some of the consultants with the direct ophthalmoscope. I don't think anybody will think about this at this stage, but it was there. And the benchmark of success, retina on, the surgeon used to feel so happy, and he was not bothered about anything else. And he used to tell patient, my job is done, now God will do the rest. And so this is a practical joke played on the every retinal surgeon, that the retinal surgeon carries his linen chart in his pocket. But now things are different. We do aim for a 6/6/6/9 vision in these patients. It was time to move from PGI. I came to RP Center AIIMS. And definitely it was a big change from a small department to the huge department of RP Center. And here retinal surgeons were something different. What made me follow the retina practice, when I saw the retinal surgeons, they used to walk with a spring in their feet, and they were almost like a Brahmins among the ophthalmologists and beyond reach. And a senior resident carrying an indirect ophthalmoscope, the killer indirect, he was almost like he used to feel like carrying the football for the American president having the nuclear code. And my pride possession, I can still having that. So need the indirect ophthalmoscope. I could import it through one of my consultants in 1985, and 20D Nikon lens. They are still both with me at this stage and helping me in my practice. Coming to from the lighter side of our professional life, the advantage of indirect ophthalmoscope. So no one ever came to know what you did and what you saw, because there was no way that you could visualize the indirect ophthalmoscopy done by your colleague. And compared now with the modern vitreous microsurgery in monitor, even your residents might say, "Oh, sir, you have made a mistake here." Retinopexy, we hardly had any exposure to diathermy. I did see a machine in the RP Center, but not much was used. Cryo was the flavor of the day. The advantage of cryo again was a practical, not need to be pinpointed like in diathermy. You have to be really pinpointed to the tear. And of course, the real advantage we all felt later on, sometimes we do used to say, misdiagnose the tear when there was none. And once you do the cryo, there are no trace of whether the retina had a break or not. I had really to reboot myself for laser retinopexy, where tear stares you even after you have treated it. And this will definitely surprise you. You will be surprised to know in my residency, patients were admitted for laser photocoagulation in RP Center. And putting an indirect ophthalmoscope in the OT was almost like a coronation for the senior resident. And laser machines were water cooled. You will again surprised to know they required running water, not the recirculated water which the machines later have. Now we have a solid state machine, you don't need anything. But I tell you, some of the days our laser will not work because the water supply was affected in South Delhi. And there was no repeat mode. And you beat it. If you have 4 or 5 patients lined up and you have going to do 500 spots per patient, roughly you have to move your ankle joint 2,500 times. Some of our colleagues used to complain about the ankle joint bursitis, and there was no laser intake delivery, no endo laser. Endo cryo was used, but very reluctantly by the surgeon. Ultrasound again was something very different. We used to have a scan, and we had to create a 3D image in our mind to know whether it's a detachment or not. Water bath B scan was a big pain, both the surgeon and the patient. And sometimes the water used to leak, and the whole patient used to get totally soaked in the back. And we were confusion galore in the interpretation of this machine. First time we saw this contact scan was a Japanese delegate which had come to RP Center. And to us, it almost like appeared something like from the Star Trek. It's a whisk probe measurement, and something like this was made by the Appasamy. To their credit, definitely it was a wonderful machine for the lensectomy, but no way for the vitreous surgery, because the whole globe will pulsate like anything. Then vitrectomy you have to do with the irrigating lens. It was to a nightmare of the assistant because he has to keep on moving as the surgeon moved. And subsequently, the self-retaining lenses came, which was slightly improvement over this. And vitrectomy, of course, we all have seen or still sometimes see that anterior-vitrectomy being done with the Vanna scissors. And now we have 10,000 cuts per minute machines. Coming to the MISHAB, one of the biggest problems in 20-gauge vitrectomy that we faced was putting the cannula in place. And sometimes it will slip, sometimes it will go subretinal, and all sorts of problems will come. This was a real pain for all the retinal surgeons. And first thing they used to do, they'll put the cannula in and see with the indirect whether the cannula is in place or not. So dialysis again was not very infrequent. But the problem did not go with the, say, stroker also. I will see here what I faced. It was a nightmare experience for me. Patient was one night with simple BRVO-related vitreous hemorrhage. I did a vitrectomy. Then subsequently I realized that what has happened to the trocar cannula. I didn't really notice when I removed the plug very carefully at that time and see what is happening to this tip. it is totally come out. And I was not sure whether the cannula has gone inside the vitreous cavity. I did an indirect. I really missed that night's sleep. Subsequently, when we reviewed the video, basically the metal cannula had come out with the plug. So again, this thing can happen even with the most latest and most advanced companies. The game changers. What was the game changer vitreous surgery? The wide angle viewing system, it totally bypassed a small pupil and fogging problems. And the concept of PVD, nothing like concept of PVD, which has changed the vitreous surgery forever. This is, of course, we all now do with the staining, whichever way. Sometimes without staining, you are able to detach the vitreous without much of a problem. Now you have vitreous sachets concept also coming. So this is a big change that came in our way. From RP Center to Sir Gangaram Hospital, say there was again change. We used to operate without gloves in RP Center at that time. And once I came here, I was made to don the gloves from the day one. And definitely there was some sensation change, but it didn't really affect us. And again, we used to watch our sister very meticulously putting the silk thread through the needle for the buckling surgery. Here we having a disposable needles. They had one problem with these needles, that they were sharper than, because those needles were used over and over time again, making them blunt. So sometimes you might go through this flare-up. Buckling under the microscope is more by compulsion than by design. Because of the microsurgery coming, people had removed the general light, and you had to operate the buckling surgery also under microscope. So this was possibly maybe one of the early users of microscope for the buckling surgery in this part of the country. Then came 1992, advent of phacoemulsification in a big way, and brought itself with a new indication of vitrectomy with a daring nucleus drop. And we are not at that time totally accustomed to how to deal with this situation. And we used to remove, this is a representative video because we used to do the 20 gauge one. This is a representative video. We used to remove this nucleus, which was brought by the phacosurgeons, by impaling with the needle, bring it into the anterior chamber, take it out through, and then put the anterior chamber lens. This was and we also improvised in this, that the harder the nucleus, you used a higher gauge needle. If the softer the nucleus, you'll use a lower gauge needle so that it doesn't cheese off the lens matter. But ultrasonic probe came later, but we were using ultrasonic probe with the peristaltic fluidics of the phaco machine. Only the probe was long. The problem was that the globe will collapse like anything. So we improvised again with the TUR set. What the urologists use, it's a very thick type of bore which can make the fluid go faster, and it will not allow the globe to collapse that often. So IOP in vitrectomy also is a big advancement in all these machines. Now we all know that we don't have to worry when we are taking out our instrument that it will go up or go down. It will maintain the pressure plus minus 2 millimeters of mercury. And again, the time silicone oil tamponade. I tell you, it was not easy to inject silicone oil. He is Dr. Neeraj Manjadar. Now he's a full-fledged consultant with us. And he used to be our registrar at the time. You needed a muscular assistant like him. And even he used to need a break. He will push half of the silicone oil, then say, "Sir, thoda ruk jate hain." So we used to take a break. Removal was again a problem because we used to depend upon the gravity. We again improvised here, tried to use a normal suction machine with some change in this technique to take out the silicone oil. So the vacuum of suction was around 780 millimeters of mercury. What we did, we connected with the tubing, with, of course, sterilization in process. And again, we modified the needle and the cannula. And I will show this is the one area where we suction cannula we made, and we made a small, say, opening here so that the pressure can be regulated. If you release it, then the pressure will drop. So you can control the pressure by which the suction of the silicone oil will be extracted out. But of course, the infuser has to be again, say, faster because the suction used was too high. So this we again modified it, made a shorter thing so that the faster fluid can come. And this we were using at the time with this cannula, we used to extract the silicone oil, which can sometimes at that time you will leave behind the silicone oil, come to know later after the surgery is done. And now everything with gentle movement of your ankle joint, you can push the silicone oil, you can take out the silicone oil. This is something which is miraculous for us. giant retinal tear and macular hole. Again, these are the two surgeries where we used to think nothing can be done. And patients were basically sent home telling them to just wait and nothing can be done for this. Macular hole, some of the patients will maintain some good vision sometimes. Nowadays, if you ask a vitreous surgeon a surgery that he will like to do, I think he will definitely choose a macular hole surgery. PFCL made such a big difference to the giant retinal tear. And now it is relatively, again, an easier surgery than others PVR cases. Again, the paradox of comedy in the choroidal neovascular membrane. How will we convince the patient to get the subfoveal lasered? We will tell the patient, look, you will lose your vision right now, but what you will see 5 years from now will be better than what you will see if you don't get lasers. I think you will laugh at this logic, but it was there at the time. Then came the photodynamic therapy, and it came with a jargon of terminologies. Then you all we know the occult CNVM, classic CNVM, minimal CNVM. At least I used to get lost and very difficult for me to really get along with them. And it was almost like practicing occult medicine. Those 83 seconds that you were supposedly signing the laser on the eye of the patient, you don't know what is happening. Patient didn't know what is being done, but it did had effect. And look, this is the way we used to transport the patient back from the treatment room. I almost felt like an exorcist rather than an ophthalmic surgeon. But finally, the relief came with the OCT. Now the OCT, even your optometrist will tell you, sir, this patient is going to need injection. And the anti-VEGF, of course, has totally changed the game. ROP was achieving one of the final frontiers in vitreoretina, and which we have been able to really achieve in a big way. And we are able to reduce the blindness rate in these unfortunate children who decide to come on this earth earlier than what they are supposed to be. This is again area that which we really sometimes get totally So here we had because we have the facility of having a interventional neuroradiologist. So with their help, we used to cannulate them and inject the TPA, tissue plasmin activator, at the junction. And we had carried out 2 or 3 patients, I believe. Some of them did well, but the protocol is a bit tough. You need so much of workup that these patients normally don't agree, and most of the time they come late. So this is the one problem that we face, but this is one area where now in rectoblastoma, this is being used very regularly. I'll just get you one second. Yeah. So in vascular blocks, we have now anti-VEGF, and of course the dexamethasone implant, Ozurdex, has come again in a big way. Only thing you have to be careful about the intraocular pressure. And lasers are not that commonly used again now. Retinoblastoma then and now. At our time in residency, it was an open and shut case. Straight away for enucleation, and oculoplastic surgeon were totally in the picture. Now, exit oculoplastic and enter retinal surgeons, pediatric oncologists, interventional neurologists. And nowadays, nobody talks about enucleation in these patients. Very, very rarely you go for the enucleation in these patients. Medical retina at our time was fully controlled by the retinal surgeons. And now it is undergone totally under general ophthalmology. Everybody is entitled and definitely doing. That's the reason that we started a program for training the intersegment surgeons in this medical retina and laser. So what is the future? I think in future we have anti-VEGF drops. We will be doing away with the lasers. Maybe in most cases we are doing away with vitrectomy also, because there will be advanced vitrealizing agents. And of course, the app-based OCT and OCTA and autofluorescence with the artificial intelligence coming in the place, these imaging things are going to go out of the ophthalmologist's office, and it's going to be based either in the patient's home or in the mall. So we are looking forward that from operating room surgeons we are going to become an operating room controllers. Thank you.